You already know what you should be doing. That's what makes this dangerous. Because the problem is not ignorance. It's avoidance. The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it. Epicurus. You see the harder path. You recognize it immediately. The work that matters. The action that moves your life forward. The thing that requires effort, focus, discomfort. And at the same time, you see the easier option. The one that requires less. Less effort. Less resistance. Less risk. And without even thinking about it deeply, you move toward it. Automatically. That's the pattern. Not once. Repeatedly. Daily. You don't wake up and decide to sabotage yourself. You drift into it. Small decisions. Barely noticeable. You delay starting. You check something first. You tell yourself you'll begin in a moment. And that moment stretches. It expands. Until the harder path disappears from your day entirely. Replaced by activity. Movement. Noise. But not progress. That's the cost. You stay busy. While avoiding what actually matters. And the most dangerous part is this. It feels justified. It feels reasonable. You tell yourself, I'll do it later. I just need to warm up. I'm not fully ready yet. But those are not reasons. They're escapes. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Seneca. And preparation requires discomfort. Not occasionally. Consistently. But you've trained yourself to move away from discomfort. Every time it appears. Not because you're weak. Because your brain is efficient. It's designed to conserve energy. To avoid unnecessary strain. To keep you safe. And in a physical sense, that makes sense. But in modern life, that instinct works against you. Because growth requires the exact opposite. Effort. Strain. Focus. You don't improve by doing what's easy. You maintain. You stay where you are. And if you repeat that long enough, you fall behind. Not suddenly. Gradually. Almost invisibly. Day by day. Choice by choice. You become someone who avoids difficulty. And once that becomes a pattern, it turns into identity. You start to believe, I'm not that disciplined. I don't have that level of focus. I struggle to stay consistent. But those are not truths. They are conclusions. Built from repeated behavior. Behavior that was shaped by choosing what's easy. Again and again. Do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. Bruce Lee. The path you keep avoiding is the one that would change everything. But it requires something you've been resisting. Immediate action under resistance. Not waiting. Not preparing endlessly. Moving while it feels uncomfortable. That's the shift. Because the moment you act despite resistance, you break the pattern. You interrupt the automatic move toward ease. And that moment matters more than you think. Because every time you override that impulse, you weaken it. And every time you follow it, you strengthen it. That's how this is built. Not in big decisions. In small, repeated ones. You don't need to fix your entire life. You need to stop choosing the easy path. In the moments that matter. That's where control begins. The hidden system forcing you toward ease. You think you're choosing the easy path. You're not. You're being pulled toward it. Constantly. Quietly. Predictably. The mind that is anxious about future events is miserable. Seneca. There is a system running beneath your awareness. It does not ask for permission. It does not wait for your approval. It operates automatically. And its only goal is simple. Minimize discomfort. Maximize immediate reward. That's it. Everything you do passes through that filter. Every action. Every decision. Every moment of resistance. The system evaluates. Is this hard? Is this uncomfortable? Is there an easier alternative? And when the answer is yes, it redirects you. Not dramatically. Subtly. You don't feel forced. You feel persuaded. That's why it's effective. You sit down to do something that matters. Something meaningful. Something that requires focus. And within seconds, your mind shifts. Not away from the task completely. Just slightly. Let me check this first. Let me organize things. Let me prepare a bit more. It feels productive. It feels harmless. But it's not. It's the system rerouting you. Away from effort. Toward ease. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Marcus Aurelius. But your thoughts are not neutral. They are influenced, conditioned, shaped by repetition. Every time you choose the easier option, your brain learns something. It records the pattern. Effort avoid. Discomfort escape. Ease reward. And it strengthens that pathway. Not once. Repeatedly. Until it becomes automatic. Until you no longer feel like you're choosing. You just follow. This is where it becomes dangerous. Because now, even when you want to do the hard thing, you feel resistance immediately. Stronger than before. Heavier than before. More convincing than before. Because the system has been reinforced. It has learned what works. Avoid discomfort. Seek ease. Repeat. Do not be carried away by the impression, but say, wait for me a little, O impression. Epictetus. But you haven't been pausing. You've been responding instantly. A feeling appears. You follow it. A thought suggests ease. You accept it. A moment of resistance shows up. You move away from it. Without interruption. Without questioning. That's how the system stays in control. And it doesn't stop there. It evolves. It becomes smarter. It starts disguising itself as logic. As reason. As justification. I'll do it when I'm more focused. I don't want to rush this. I need the right conditions. It sounds intelligent, measured, even disciplined. But underneath, it's the same mechanism. Avoid discomfort. Move toward ease. Man conquers the world by conquering himself. Zeno of Citium. Right now, that hasn't happened. Because you haven't been aware of what's happening internally. You've been reacting. Following. Allowing the system to lead. And the longer it leads, the stronger it becomes. This is why starting feels harder over time. Not easier. Because you've trained your mind to resist effort. To prefer ease. To avoid friction. So when real work appears, it feels heavier than it actually is. Not because the task changed. Because your conditioning did. And this is why you feel stuck. Not because you lack ability. Not because you lack knowledge. Because your internal system is misaligned. It's working against your goals. Not with them. But here's what changes everything. This system is not permanent. It is learned. And what is learned can be unlearned, rewritten, replaced. The obstacle is the way. Marcus Aurelius. The discomfort you've been avoiding is the exact thing that rewires you. Every time you move toward it instead of away, you interrupt the pattern. You weaken the old pathway. You build a new one. Effort action. Discomfort progress. Resistance signal to move. That's the reversal. And it starts small. But it compounds. Fast. You don't need to eliminate the system. You need to retrain it. Through action. Repeated. Deliberate. Consistent. Until ease is no longer your default. Execution is. That's how control is built. Not by thinking differently. By acting differently. Until your mind follows. You don't need more understanding. You need interruption. Immediate. Decisive. Uncompromising. He who fears death will never do anything worthy of a living man. Seneca. Because the system controlling you depends on one thing. Delay. A small window. A gap between impulse and action. That's where it wins. That's where it speaks. That's where it convinces you to step away from what matters. You feel resistance. You pause. And in that pause, everything begins. Thoughts appear. Excuses form. Alternatives become attractive. And within seconds, you're off track. Not because you decided to stop, because you waited. That's the mechanism. So we remove the weight. Completely. The moment you feel resistance, you move. Not after thinking. Not after preparing. Immediately. That's the override. The chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control, and which have to do with the choices I actually control. Epictetus. You don't control the feeling. You control the response. So you train the response. Relentlessly. A task appears. You act. No delay. No internal discussion. No adjustment. You begin. That single shift destroys the system, because it relies on hesitation. Without hesitation, it has no entry point. At first, it feels unnatural, heavy, uncomfortable, because you're breaking a pattern. But that's the point. You're not trying to feel comfortable. You're trying to take control. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. You don't think about discipline. You act disciplined. Instantly. That's how identity changes. Not through reflection. Through behavior. Repeated. You simplify everything. No complex routines. No long preparation. No unnecessary steps. Action must be immediate. Clear. Direct. Because complexity creates delay. And delay feeds the system. You reduce the first step. Make it small. Simple. Impossible to avoid. Open the document. Write one line. Start the movement. That's it. Once you begin, momentum takes over. The resistance fades. Not completely, but enough. Enough to continue. You train this daily. In small moments. Not just big ones. You respond immediately to simple tasks. You stand when it's time to stand. You start when it's time to start. You move when action is required. No pause. No drift. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius. Resistance becomes your signal. Not to stop. To move faster. Because now, you recognize it. You don't interpret it as danger. You see it as a trigger. A command. Act now. This is where most people fail. They wait for the resistance to disappear. It won't. You act through it. And that action weakens it. Every time. You remove backup plans. No, I'll do it later. No, I'll try again tomorrow. There is only now. And now requires action. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. Epictetus. This becomes your standard. Immediate execution. Every time. No exceptions. No adjustments. And after repetition, something shifts. The delay disappears. The hesitation fades. The system loses control. Because you've removed its foundation. Now, when resistance appears, you don't think. You act. Automatically. And that's when everything changes. Because now, the easy path is no longer your default. Execution is. Make the hard path your default. Right now, difficulty feels like something extra. Something optional. Something you approach or avoid. That's the problem. Because anything that feels optional eventually gets ignored. Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. Seneca. You've been treating effort like an event. Something you turn on when you feel ready. Something you activate when you're motivated. But winners don't operate like that. For them, effort is the baseline, not the exception. You don't rise by occasionally doing hard things. You rise by making difficulty normal. Expected. Built into your day. Right now, your system is built around comfort. You remove friction. You simplify your path. You choose what feels manageable. And over time, that creates a life with no pressure, no demand, no growth. Because growth requires resistance. And you've been avoiding it. The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. Epictetus. Comfort is external. It shifts. It changes. It weakens your control. Because it trains you to depend on ease instead of strength. So we reverse it. You deliberately choose the harder option. Not occasionally. Daily. Consistently. In small moments. In obvious moments. In ways that reshape your behavior. You take the action that requires more focus. You do the task that demands more effort. You stay longer when your mind wants to leave. You push slightly beyond what feels comfortable. Not dramatically. Precisely. Because this is not about extremes. It's about consistency. You don't need to destroy yourself. You need to train yourself. You introduce controlled difficulty. Daily. Not random. Not chaotic. Structured. Intentional. The obstacle is the way. Marcus Aurelius. You stop seeing difficulty as something in your way. You start seeing it as the path itself. Because every time you move through it, you strengthen your control, your discipline, your identity. This changes how you interpret resistance. It no longer signals stop. It signals continue. Because now, you understand what it means. You remove the idea of easy days. Not in terms of workload. In terms of standard. Your standard does not drop. It holds. Regardless of conditions. This is where most people break. They adjust their effort based on how they feel. You don't. You maintain it. At the same level. Every day. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. Epictetus. You don't talk about discipline. You demonstrate it. Through repetition. Through consistency. Through action. You train your mind to expect effort, not avoid it. So when difficulty appears, there is no shock, no resistance. No hesitation. It fits. It belongs. It's part of your system. And over time, something shifts. The hard path no longer feels hard. Not because it changed. Because you did. Your tolerance increases. Your focus sharpens. Your execution stabilizes. Because what used to feel like effort now feels normal. That's the goal. Not making things easier. Becoming stronger. So that difficulty no longer controls your behavior. And once that happens, you stop choosing the easy path. Not because you're forcing yourself. Because it no longer satisfies you. You've outgrown it. Become someone who rejects ease. At this level, this is no longer about what you do. It's about who you are. Because behavior that isn't tied to identity doesn't last. It fades. It weakens. It disappears under pressure. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. You don't need more reminders. You need a standard that defines you. Clearly. Unmistakably. You are someone who does not choose comfort over growth. That decision is already made. There is no internal debate. No reconsidering. No adjustment based on mood. It's fixed. Right now, most people still operate in options. They see both paths. The easy one. And the difficult one. And every time they're faced with that choice, they evaluate. They hesitate. They drift. And eventually, they fall into ease. Not because they decided to fail. Because they never decided who they are. You remove that uncertainty. Completely. You don't choose the harder path. You follow it. Because that's your standard. That's your baseline. That's your identity. He who is brave is free. Seneca. Freedom is not having more options. It's being clear about which ones don't exist for you anymore. And ease, as a default, no longer exists. This doesn't make your life harder. It makes it cleaner, simpler, because decisions are removed. The path is clear. The standard is fixed. And you follow it. You don't wake up and think, what should I do today? You already know. You execute. You don't sit in front of work and hesitate. You begin. You don't feel resistance and slow down. You move through it. That's what identity does. It removes friction. Because there is no internal conflict. The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it. Epicurus. You no longer see difficulty as something to tolerate. You see it as something that confirms you're on the right path. It validates your direction. It reinforces who you are. And this is where it becomes permanent. Because you're no longer forcing yourself. You're expressing yourself. Through action. Through discipline. Through consistency. Old patterns don't disappear. They wait. They look for moments of weakness. Moments of comfort. Moments where you might slip. But now, there is nothing for them to attach to. Because your identity rejects them. Automatically. You don't entertain the easier option. You don't consider it. You don't give it space. It doesn't exist. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. Epictetus. This is no longer something you think about. It's how you operate. Daily. Consistently. Without interruption. And once you reach this level, everything changes. Your actions become predictable. Your discipline becomes stable. Your results become inevitable. Because there is no variation. No inconsistency. No fallback. You move forward. Every day. At the same standard. That's what separates you now. Not effort. Identity. If you made it this far, you already know. So don't stop here. Subscribe to the Unbroken Protocol. And go to the next video. How you are letting yourself down daily. Because even now, there are patterns you're still allowing that are quietly destroying your progress. And if you don't see them clearly, they will keep holding you back. See you in the next video.